you all today. I'm Jen Vanette. I'm Outreach Coordinator here at the museum, and I'm like staring Mark down as he no, it's fine. No, we're really happy to see you here today. Lunch and Learns happen every second and fourth Tuesday, so our next one will be on November 25th. Did I actually remember that correctly? I just looked it up a minute ago. And we will be having one of our special Snacks and Artifacts edition where we bring things out of our collection that are not always on display, and our theme will be Home for the Holidays. So that should be interesting. I hope you're able to join us for that one, so that's November 25th. And then housekeeping announcements. If you need a restroom, there's one just out that back door. Feel free to use that at any point. We're not so formal here that you can't get up and, that's fine. Or if you need some more hydration or another Rice Krispie treat, we support that. So go help yourself at any point during today's presentation. We're good with that. I think that's all my housekeeping announcements. So I am going to pass it over. We're really lucky in Saginaw County to have the Mid-Michigan Heroes Museum. And so when this Lunch and Learn happened to fall on Veterans Day, I was like, I know who to call. And we have a special connection too, because our education coordinator, Christy, her husband, Scott Furtaw, is on their board. And so that was really easy. I was like, hey, Christy, do you have, she's like, and the next thing I knew, I had a text from Scott, it's set up, it's done. Good to have friends in the community. But what better way to honor the day than to bring in the experts, right? So
where are they?
What happened?
Where they go?
You didn't know you signed up for Comedy Hour.
Yeah.
Yes, so anyway, we're very pleased to welcome John Odger to, he is the educational director at the museum. Is that correct title?
I have about 20 different hats there. I'm mainly the curator, but yeah.
Well, okay.
But I fall under education too.
I was going to say, well, then the website needs to be updated because
everything. They can't put me on the website in like 8 different slots, but
and that is museum.
It all depends
work.
on what we need at the time, right?
Exactly. That is museum work. We all wear many hats.
That's right.
But anyway, I am going to leave it there because I am clearly a terrible comedian because they're not laughing at all. So I'm going to hand it over to you.
Me either. It's a tough room.
Thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, welcome everybody. As Jen said, I'm John Odger. I am, like I said, many different hats, curator, registrar, educational, only because I used to substitute teach, which I found out was about 90% stand-up comedy. So I will probably try to make you laugh. It's just in my nature today, but it is a kind of a serious subject. So yeah, maybe that won't be right, but anyway, we'll see what we do. Like I said earlier, the biggest thing is I hope I don't look out and see somebody snoozing because of their nice lunch. So if that happens, then we'll have to pump it up a little bit. One of those emerald things, like bam or something. Yeah. Anyway, today I am going to be talking basically a brief history on Veterans Day itself. Today, of course, is Veterans Day. For the most part, it's always been on November 11th. We will get into that in a little bit, though. Yes, now I got to remember what my next slides are. Oh, that's a pointer. Technology. I'm dealing with history, not technology. This is all new and modern. You're lucky I was able to actually do a PowerPoint. Origins of Veterans Day. Boy, that came out bad. I'm sorry. Look better at the museum. November 11th, 1918. The big reason it's on Veterans Day is on November 11th is because that was the day that the armistice was signed that ended World War I. That morning, around 5:30 to 6 o'clock in the morning, they finally got everybody to sign the armistice, the Germans, the French, Belgians, us, the Brits, everybody. that were involved there. They signed it that morning with it to end at 11 a.m. That day. So thus the 11th hour of the 11th month of the 11th day. To them, it seemed really poignant to do that. However, oh no, wait, it only lasted 36 hours. The original armistice was only for a day and a half. It was very quickly expanded. It was extended 3 different times. The first time, oh boy, I hit that mic pretty good. All right. It lasted until December of 1918, which is only a month longer. Prolonged again until January, mid-January of 1919, and the final one, and then again till February. This is all while they're trying to work out the actual peace treaty. An armistice is just a ceasefire. Anybody here happen to be in the Korean War? No. Okay. In 1953, what ended the Korean War, air quotes, ended, was an armistice. From what I am still currently aware of, even though in the last time he was in office, President Trump, as 45, tried to actually do a peace treaty. I don't think it went through with the North Koreans. And we're basically still under just a ceasefire in Korea. It's still just an armistice, which is just a ceasefire. It just they extend it. Which, if anybody was in Korea later, like my dad got sent there in '68, there were infiltrators and things going on there still, and still are to this day. But anyway, the final one was till January of 1920. However, let's see, is there more? Yes. The formal peace treaty was signed June of 1919, so the armistice till January of 1920 didn't need to take effect at that point. All right. And that was the Treaty of Versailles. Done in a woods in a train car that was used again in 1940 by Adolf Schicklgruber, to put the French under his thumb after he took out France, and they signed a peace treaty in 1940 with Nazi Germany. He used the same railroad car in the same place as a, thumb to the nose to the French at that time. Hey, look, blank screen again. The Great Day. That day, November 11th, 1918, there was still between the time of the signing and the end or the beginning of the ceasefire at 11 a.m. Of course, there's 11 hours before that too that's counted since midnight, right, of the 10th. There were still almost 11,000 casualties in 11 hours that morning. Out of that, almost 3,000 of those casualties resulted in death. And that was on all sides, not just Americans, not just Brits, but that's everybody fighting on just the Western Front. We'll get into that in just a minute, too. Yes, and hopefully, I got to come down here to do this. What'd I do? I lost it. Back. There we go. All right, hopefully everybody will be able to hear this. And hopefully there's not too many commercials. Oh, no, there we go. Okay. Oh, no, a commercial. Sorry about the commercial. Yeah, we don't care about Sam Bernstein. That was it. Not.
Known us for a long time. Our name matters to us and to our clients.
Okay. All right. Can we use this to pause it? No. It's not. As long as the audio comes through, it's okay because it's just audio. Yes, but real quick before you started, thank you, Jen. This is basically the last minute on the Western Front before the armistice. And even just talking about it, I've heard this several times, and I always, I mean, I can feel it already. My hair's standing up, got the goosebumps going. So go ahead. Hopefully it'll play out there. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. Isn't it? Hopefully you heard all of that last bit. That last one shell goes off in the distance. Then after just a few seconds, all of a sudden the birds are back chirping because it's finally quiet. To me, it's one of the most poignant reminders to me of not only what this day is originally about, but what it has become. At that time in 1918, this was the war to end all wars. This was the World War, not World War I, the World War. Unfortunately, 25 years later, we're in the midst of another one. 5 years after that, we're fighting communism in Korea. And just a decade later, same thing in Southeast Asia, Vietnam. And on since then. Small things here and there. Gulf War, 1991. War on Terror since 2001. And it's been 24 years. It's still not over. You know, we used to say Vietnam was our longest war. Not anymore. So the day has become about all of our veterans. But originally, it was basically about these guys. And one guy I want to talk about is Henry Gunther. Unfortunately, he was not from Michigan, but he was the last American soldier to die on the Western Front in World War I. And he was killed, give or take some seconds, but just 60 seconds, 1 minute. Basically, when you're hearing those last guns before they stop, that's that minute that Henry Gunther was killed in before the armistice went into effect that morning. He was from East Baltimore, Maryland. Can't say I'm not. Part of me being the Michigan Heroes Museum, it'd be really cool if he was from Michigan, but at the same time, nothing's really cool about being the last soldier killed. He was with the 313th Infantry of the 79th Division, Lorraine Cross Division. He was drafted in September 1917 and went in and served. He ended up being a supply sergeant. However, over on the Western Front, he sent a letter home to one of his buddies. And in that letter, he said, hey, listen, do whatever you can. Avoid the draft. Avoid getting caught up in this. The conditions are absolutely horrible. It is miserable. And he was, as a supply sergeant, not necessarily up in the trenches. And he went on and on about how bad Army life and service was during World War I. And the censors read his letter. And he's basically charged with sedition, telling somebody to avoid the draft. He's demoted from supply sergeant down to private and put now on the front lines. Well, he's up there on the front lines. He wants to prove himself as a good soldier, not only to himself, but to his buddies around him, to the rest of the unit. Maybe he'll get promoted back up. And so he ends up single-handedly charging a German machine gun nest that was set up at a roadblock. You know, they're set up there, they've got the machine gun, it's now after 10 a.m., pretty close to 11. Everybody knew that 11 o'clock, even him. Our guys knew it, their guys knew it, and he says, nope, I'm going. And he jumps up with his weapon and he takes off down the road charging this German machine gun nest. Now the Germans didn't want to shoot him. They knew the armistice was coming. They didn't want to shoot anybody anymore. They were done. They were done. We were done. A lot of them had been fighting a lot longer than we had. Of course, America, you know, we didn't declare war till April 6th of 1917. The war had started August 1914, and now it's November of 1918. And they tried to wave him away. They're just like, go back, get out of the way, go. But Gunther fires at him. And probably not just one round, he probably shot a couple times at him as he got closer to them. And preservation of their own lives, they hit the trigger on the machine gun, send a stream of bullets out there, and basically to save themselves, and Gunther died instantly. The last American soldier to die on the Western Front. So, yeah, like I said, not very upbeat, but, you know, since the armistice happened, 1918, November 11th, there have been ceremonies all the time. I mean, we're here today because it's Veterans Day. I mean, you'd probably be here no matter who was speaking, but, you know, for the lunch and learn, but, you know, we're still together with me here today because of it. But the first ceremonies took place in England. Now, like I said, Europe had been fighting this war for 4+ years. We were kind of Johnny-come-latelys. So, rightly so, that over in Europe they would think more about this, I think, than we would here necessarily. So the very next year, 1919, is the first ceremony given by King George V at Buckingham Palace in England. His idea, though, was not just to remember the war dead, which they were doing as well. In Britain, I should have looked up the numbers. It was thousands upon thousands. Throughout Europe, basically an entire generation in Europe had been in this war. And trying to think of numbers, but at least I know it's got to be at least 40% did not come home or did not come home unhurt. Casualties, you know, we're still in the type of medicine like our own Civil War where you got shot and you got hit in the arm and they cut your arm off. You know, you got shot in the leg, they cut your leg off. Got shot in the neck, they cut your head. No, wait, I'm sorry. But yeah, I know how to save him, put a tourniquet on his neck. Yeah, but you know, that's still the same medicine we were working with. We didn't have sulfa powder. We didn't have antibiotics yet. That wasn't until the 20s. And top that all off with the newest form of warfare, gas, which, if it didn't kill you by getting in your lungs, blinded you, you know, just absolutely horrible, horrible stuff. So over in Europe, I mean, there's just thousands upon thousands of men and women that didn't come home. But it was not just to remember them, but the peace. Like I said, at the end of World War I, the war to end all wars. That was it. We do this peace, and they looked at Wilson's 14 points and things. It's a whole different situation. We talk for hours on that too. But they're looking at this, okay, this is never happening again. We can't allow this to ever happen again. And it worked for a little while. But that's a whole nother story too of why things started happening in Germany and stuff later. But here in the U.S., it took us 2 years. It was not until 1920 that it was first observed as Armistice Day. Veterans Day was originally Armistice Day. It finally became a public holiday in 1924 here. And like I said, it was originally Armistice Day. Basically, I mean, obviously from 1918 here in this country, from 1920 until 1954. Well, before 1954, we had not just World War I, but World War II, and Korea had just had their own, had an armistice there in 53. So Eisenhower, looking at this, says, okay, let's turn it into all veterans, everybody that's served. And I think they were all gone by then. Still had some Spanish-American War veterans left. All the Civil War guys were gone by 54, I'm pretty sure, both North and South. But anyway, but then it became a day to thank, to think about, to remember all of our veterans, both living and, oh yeah, I already did that, sorry, living and past. It was later just kind of just shortened, instead of all Veterans Day, now it's just Veterans Day. Then, in 1968, at the height of the Vietnam War, they decided, oh, hey, let's make all of these holidays uniform throughout the country, basically for the federal employees for days off. Anybody a federal employee in here, or had been? Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about, right? Happy Veterans Day. Yeah. So, but, the same thing, Memorial Day, Thanksgiving, all of that got rolled up into this. And so it moved Veterans Day from November 11th, which had been the day of the armistice, to the closest Monday. So this year, it would have been yesterday if this was still up and running. Everybody would have had a 3-day weekend that, got time off for Veterans Day and things like that. So, which is, gosh, I can't imagine if that was still going on because I think there's one standing in the back there. The Marines already have so much that they celebrate on November 10th. You were a Marine, weren't you, John? Oh, I'm sorry. You were Army? Okay, good. Any Marines in here? No? No? Well, if there is and you don't want to raise your hand, happy birthday anyway. 250 yesterday. Imagine that if it would have been Veterans Day and the Marine Corps birthday on the same day yesterday at 250 years old, the Marine Corps. The jails would be full of drunk Marines. Anyway, I love my Marines. I got a lot of buddies that are Marines. I was Army, but just reserves and not deployed. So I actually, according to the VA, I am not a veteran, but that's another story too. But then 7 years later, Gerald Ford, hopefully everybody here knows Gerald Ford. He's the only Michigan president, even though he fell down a couple times, but he was still pretty good. Lost to Carter, though. That's interesting. Anyway, he moved it back in 1975 to November 11th. Not sure. I think that's just so we didn't have to remember in 75. I don't know what it would have. I don't know what time of year he did this, but of course yesterday was also the 50th anniversary, which would have been 1975 of, anybody? Thank you, sir. Yes, losing 29 sailors on the Edmund. So, which was, for me personally, was nice this year, only because my Facebook was filled with Edmund Fitzgerald stuff and not Marine Corps birthday stuff. So, I'm sorry, I'm just teasing. I gotta dig them when I can, you know, those Marines. Gotta love them, though. Anybody know injure a platoon of Marines? Throw a handful of sand at a brick wall and tell them to hit the beach. Sorry, bad joke. This is a tough room. You were right, Jen. It's a tough room. I'm sorry. No, that's bad. I love my Marines. It's Veterans Day. I shouldn't be. But that's the thing. We all, in the military, we will go after each other, but let somebody from civilian side say something, and we will all beat that person up, probably. So we get to the poppy, and I'm sure you've seen them. It's not, we do the poppies here. I believe it's the American Legion. Don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure it's a Legion, not the VFW. But they do the poppies, but they do them more in the spring. It's like March, April. It really doesn't have anything to do with anything. I was talking to an American Legion guy from Frankenmuth yesterday about this. And I said, well, why do you guys do it then? He says, oh, that's the best time of year to make money. And I said, so it's all about, you know, getting a buck or two for a poppy at the street corner or whatever. And he says, yep. I said, okay. But it is what it is, I guess. But over in Europe, it's really big, especially England. But the poppy became the symbol of Armistice Day because of the poem In Flanders Fields. Captain John McCrae was a Canadian soldier. He was in World War I. He wrote this poem in 1915. We'll see it here in just a minute. But the biggest thing is not only in the cemeteries that were there behind the lines, but even after the war in those fields that had been devastated by conflict. I mean, moonscape looking. It just absolutely horrible. When the grasses started growing back, the one thing that started growing back before anything other than the grasses were poppies again in the fields there. And you could go and see some of these fields at one time, and it was just nothing but these red poppies everywhere, where men from all different countries had shed their blood and lost their lives on those fields. And became the symbol, the poppy then became the symbol of that bloodshed over there. And as I said earlier, it's very popular in the British Commonwealth. In fact, this year, Canada basically made their military, starting November 1st, wear a poppy on their uniform. So not only, England itself, but throughout all the countries there, including Australia, New Zealand, who did a lot in World War I. And here in the U.S., like I said, it's more a springtime thing, Memorial Day sometimes. Oh, I made a couple boo-boos when I wrote this out. Anyway, this is the poem. I know not everybody can see it. If you permit me for just a moment, I'll read it for you. In Flanders Fields by John McCrae. In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from falling hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields. Like I said, this was written in 1915. The war had started in 1914. It still had basically 3 more years to go when he wrote this. So that is Veterans Day in a nutshell. Okay, well, I'm a little fast. We do have other military holidays throughout the year, and I wanted to put this in here kind of as a side note to Veterans Day. We have Memorial Day, and a lot of people, and I'm not saying anybody in here doesn't, but a lot of people don't realize what these different days are for. Veterans Day is for all veterans, living, past, depending on your conception of time, future. But Memorial Day is only for those that were killed in action, those that didn't come home from their time in service. And then you have Armed Forces Day. It's the third, not far from Memorial Day. It is, I know I've got it here somewhere. Sorry. That's what happens when you don't actually use your notes. I want to say third Saturday of May. So yeah, it's usually right before Memorial Day. And that's Armed Forces Day is one I really think gets overshadowed because it's so close to Memorial Day. Except for those that, have somebody in service in their family, but it is for those who are actively serving. And then the birthdays. We mentioned the Marine Corps birthday already yesterday. The Army's birthday is June 14th. They celebrated also 250 years earlier this year. You may have seen the parade. I was fine with the parade until I rage quit watching it when the announcer said cavalry. It's cavalry. I'm sorry. It's one of my pet peeves. And somebody that's doing this on a national stage should know the difference. Anyway, just me. Sorry. The Navy is October 13th. They also just celebrated 250 years. Coast Guard, August 4th. I believe it's 1790 something. Everybody's got Google now, so feel free to look it up. But they're not quite to 250 years yet. And the Air Force, which used to be our youngest branch, was September 18th of 1947. So the Air Force actually just celebrated, what was it? It was 75 years just a few years ago, which was a big milestone for them. And Space Force, we have to count them. It is a real military branch now. Although we have none in the museum yet, I can tell you that for sure. We do have NASA and astronauts, but not actual Space Force. They were created December 20th. Once again, I should have wrote down the year, but just a few years ago. So, might be 5 now. And we get to other things that happen on November 11th. The oldest one I could find that had anything to do with America anyway was 1620, Mayflower Compact. The Pilgrims on their way over here, everybody, well, not just the Pilgrims, so there's other people on the boat too, but they signed the compact of how they were going to go through life once they hit shore and things. It did inspire some things from our own Constitution, so it is, or to our own Constitution, I should say. So it is a pretty powerful thing. Anybody from Virginia? No? Okay, well this is there's a couple on here that are kind of just for me. I am a longtime Civil War reenactor as well and Civil War historian. 35 years, I think, now this fall. Yeah, I passed 35 years of doing that. I was 15, do the math. Yes, I am as old as I look. Anyway, not as old as I act, though. That's a difference. But VMI, Virginia Military Institute, was founded. If you've heard of such famous people as Thomas Jonathan Jackson, Stonewall, I believe Early might have gone there, and A.P. Hill, and a few others. Anyway, a lot of guys that ended up being generals during the Civil War, usually Southern. This is the other one that's for me, just in case you wanted to know. It's also the date, excuse me, Sherman's troops destroyed Rome, Georgia. I say that because there was a lot of Michigan troops involved in that. And from this area, the 23rd Michigan, which had started in East Saginaw, was there. So, but and a World War I veteran and World War II veteran, George S. Patton Jr. I'm sure most people have heard of George Patton. If you haven't, go check out George C. Scott's rendition. I think he does a terrific job. Other than the voice was really high. Patton had a higher voice. But anyway, he was born on November 11th. So you got a guy that arguably liked being in war. And on his birthday, probably the worst birthday present he ever got was World War I ending that day. Because I'm sure he was ready to charge through with his tanks even then and finish the Germans off. But in 1921, President Harding dedicates the tomb of the unknown soldier in Arlington. At that time, there was only one there because it was an unknown from World War I. Now there are more. We have one from World War II, Korea, Vietnam. In fact, it was, several years ago. Is anybody involved with the POW, MIA people at all? Okay. Prisoner of war, missing in action, POW, MIA. There was a huge push since Vietnam to find all the missing in action people. Some of them had been prisoners of war, some just missing. But they ended up finding out who the Vietnam unknown was, buried at Arlington. I'm not sure if he's still there. I don't think they exhumed or anything. But they do know, so he's not technically unknown. But really, since Vietnam, and Vietnam was one of those that was the same way, except for sometimes prisoners missing in action, where we pulled everybody out. When we left an area, whether it was by armored personnel carrier or more than likely helicopter, all the wounded, all the dead, everybody got out. You didn't leave anybody behind. We can't necessarily say that for Korea, and definitely not World War II or World War I, because we didn't have the capacity, the technology, the transportation to be able to do that. But since Vietnam, that, along with different ID forms and things like that, have led to not having any unknowns in our latest conflicts. So I don't know. Gosh, I hope nobody ever else has to be buried there. Because if there is, that's a family somewhere that doesn't know where their soldier, sailor, Marine, Air Force, airman, etc. is at. 1925, very poignant, because I think we're going to have to go to the end of the season and just to finally beat the Bears to get into the Super Bowl this year, or at least the playoffs, because we're tied at first, in case you wanted to know, 6-3, 6-3, both the Lions and the Bears. But in 1925, the city of Chicago renamed Grant Park Stadium, as this is why it's called Soldier Field over there. And the latest thing I heard, I don't know, they were looking to move away from Soldier Field too and build a nice new stadium, kind of like we did with Silverdome and Ford Field and stuff. But instead of moving into the town that they're part of, they're actually thinking about moving out, I think somewhere near where the White Sox are, over by the airport, O'Hare, right? Chicago, anyway. But the Bears, from what I heard, might be moving out of Soldier Field. But it was dedicated to honor the World War I dead, U.S., of course. And in 1940, really cool thing, the Willys, the Willys Corporation, Vehicle Corporation, unveiled its new GP, or General Purpose Vehicle, for the first time for military use. And of course, now we know that as Jeep, which came from GP, together, General Purpose, and everybody started calling it a GP, Jeep, just kind of went into Jeep. And now if you own a Jeep, you can get ducked, right? Nobody does it to a Liberty. I own a Liberty. Nobody ever does it. But, oh, well, that's okay. I don't need a bunch of rubber ducks hanging around. But, yeah. So now it's become some giant thing. Michigan serves, I did some digging. Most of these are approximations. But on, what has Michigan done? I started with the Civil War. I could have gone back a little further, although Mexican-American War, we did have people from Michigan. We were a state by then, have been a state for 10 years. We did have people that went down to Mexico with Scott and, yes, Polk. And, but finding the information was a little harder. So I started with Civil War. Over 90,000 from Michigan alone served in the Civil War. We had, I knew I'd forget this, 31, I believe, regiments of infantry. Regiments usually around 1,000 men. Was it nine cavalry, I believe, maybe more. Once again, it's a Google thing. We had a whole regiment of sharpshooters and one of engineers and mechanics. So, and not to mention the sailors and Marines that were in and others that were in the regular Army service. But out of that 90,000, almost 15,000 died during the Civil War. Now, out of that, around 10 to 11,000 were disease alone. You got farm boys, right? Going off to these bigger cities, whether Grand Rapids, Detroit, Flint, different places, and then to even bigger cities like Washington, D.C. and other places. And they get in with some of these city boys and stuff that, it's not like everybody was checked like they are now. How many veterans do I have in here? Anybody? No? Oh, one? Okay. You don't have to duck walk for the doctor and things like that, and they check you all over and do all the testing back during the Civil War. If you had 4 good teeth and you didn't look like you were going to collapse, they took you, as long as you professed that you were over 18 years old. So they get in with these bigger cities, bigger groups of people, and cholera, dysentery, tuberculosis, even just pneumonia would kill you, which it still does, but it ran rampant through some of these camps. And it was even worse if your officer thought that the latrine should be upstream instead of downstream. So then Spanish-American War, 1898, 6 months. Michigan really didn't have a lot of troops. There was one regiment that actually did some fighting in Cuba. Most of them that were there later for occupation duty. We had 58 deaths out of thousands that served during that time period, and 57 of those were from disease. That one was malaria, was bad with the mosquito thing, just like the Panama Canal later on in the early 1900s. Malaria did the thing, yellow fever they call it. World War I, what we've been mainly talking about today, over 136,000 Michigan men served in World War I. And about 5,000 of those didn't make it home. You know what? There's something I forgot too. I better talk about it now or I'll forget. I forgot to put something on the important dates that happened. I can't believe I did that. November 11th, 1918, the very day that the armistice is signed, ending the fighting, or at least doing a ceasefire on the Western Front in France and Belgium. It's the same exact day that between 5 and 10,000 Bolsheviks up in northern Russia attacked the U.S. contingent that's up there. We had the 339th Infantry and the 310th Engineers had been sent up to northern Russia. They landed there September 1918, and that was the day, the same exact day, they have their first really big battle against the Bolsheviks, communists, Red Army, whatever you want to call them, the ones that had ousted the Tsar, Tsar Nicholas, and eventually killed him and his entire family. And, you know, Stalin, Lenin, that's their side of it. But that was the same day that they attacked them up there. The Michigan thing about that is that out of the 339th, or all the U.S. troops that were up there, almost 6,000, nearly 90% were from the state of Michigan that were up in Russia. And out of that 90%, nearly 70% were from the Metro Detroit area. However, there are plenty of, they ended up called the Polar Bears. There are plenty of them from all over the state, especially mid-Michigan here as well. A lot of the guys that didn't go off with the first men into World War I from the armories and stuff, from what became the National Guard, ended up in the Polar Bears later up there. Anyway, getting back to this, sorry about that tangent. I didn't want to forget about them though. Then World War II, lots and lots, over 700,000 from Michigan served during the war, and out of that, almost 13,000 deaths. That one was that's really easy to find out there. In fact, there's an entire list of all the Michigan, by state actually, of all the states, of everybody that was killed, died of wounds, died of injury, etc. in World War II. Korea, there's an estimated, sorry, 223,000 that served. Out of that, nearly 1,500 deaths. And Vietnam, approximately during the Vietnam era, and I think that number might be a little low, but that's what I was able to find, about 236,000 from Michigan with 2,651 deaths. And if I remember right, we are, a bad thing to be known for, I guess, but we are in like at least the top 10, if not the top 5 for deaths during Vietnam, per capita at least for Michigan. Yeah, we're up there. Then War on Terror, total, both Iraq and Afghanistan, Michigan's had 250 deaths so far. It doesn't count some of the things like Grenada, and I didn't do the Gulf War because there's only Michigan, probably about, I think it's under 20 for Michigan for the Gulf War. There weren't too many. And then veterans. Now this is some old numbers here, but as of 2023, there were around 479,000 veterans living in Michigan, which is about randomly 5.6 of the state's population, which means that about every 1 in 20 people, you mean, what do we got? Quick, almost 40 in here, and I mean, myself and, what's your name, sir? Roger Dubé over here, about out of 40, there's 2 of us. That would be about right? 1 in 20. So every 1 in 20 of the people you meet around Michigan are veterans. Well, at least in 2023, right? The highest state with percentage of veterans is Alaska. I wonder if that's because some just want to go and get away from everybody. But I know I'm out there myself. But the lowest, and New Jersey's tied with, there's a couple other states too, but Jersey was at the bottom of the list, 3.6. So we're not horribly high in that, but we're not tiny either. I had a couple other things too I wanted to talk about real quick. Where'd it go? Did I not write it down on here? I'm so sorry, everybody. We are, and this is as of 2025, according to the National World War II Museum down in New Orleans, Michigan is down, I believe, below 2,000 World War II vets. I know in fact, I can't remember. I can see it, me writing it down. It's either 1,600 and change or 1,900 and change. But we're definitely down below 2,000 in the entire state. But then again, you're talking about guys and ladies now that are, most of them over 100 years old. It's to have, and some of those, obviously were in during the time, but were in late enough that they didn't go overseas. And then you look at Korea, and the Korean vets are, gosh, not much younger. Korea was only 5 years after World War II. And so, those men and women now are, 90s. Vietnam, of course, we're now talking, the youngest maybe around 70, if not 70s. It did go on for a while. And then to top it all off with Vietnam, you also have to add in Agent Orange. You didn't have to worry about that in Korea, World War II, or some of the earlier ones, which is definitely taking its toll. So anyway, but once again, that's we're down to kind of not happy things. So, but anyway, today, make sure as you're out and about, you see somebody with the hat or shirt or something. Anyway, or just ask, hey, did you serve? Hey, thank you for your service. And not just today. Don't remember our veterans just on Veterans Day, but remember them every day of the year. Especially our active service that are out there doing their job. Wherever they are, maybe they don't want to be there either. It's last draft was 72. Since then, it's been an all-volunteer military. It's been, everybody that served since 1972, other than a few derelicts that the judge made them go, but has been all volunteer anyway. But I also brought some World War I items here from the museum. The museum does cover, if you've never been there, how many people have been to the Michigan Heroes Museum in Frankenmuth, down there behind Bronner's? Okay, a little smattering. The rest of you, if you can, it's a great field trip as well. We just had some other places that came in, and we're willing to do tours and stuff all the time. We have things, stories and some items from the Civil War, but our uniforms all the way from Spanish-American War on up to present day, as well as our astronauts from Michigan, their uniforms, some jumpsuits and some other odds and ends of theirs as well. And of course, every one of those has their story in there. I can't say I've done them all because the museum's now celebrating 50 years this year, but the majority of the ones in the past 11 years I've researched and written. So they're great. To me, they're great stories. They read very well. Come on in, see our displays, read some of our stories sometime. Feel free to come up here and talk about this. But before I end, is there any questions? Did anybody have any questions? Want to try to stump me? Yeah.
Well, I came in kind of late, but is there any, the only make try to collate other than the 4th of July. You didn't mention was Flag Day. Is there any significance?
Flag Day is usually, I believe that's also June 14th, I think. And I'm pretty sure that's because of the same day as the Army's birthday that they do it that day. I mean, yes, I'm kind of biased because I was Army. Were you Army as well, sir? Or?
No, my
Oh.
brother fought in the Gulf War.
Okay. But, you know, not to belittle anybody else, but yeah, everybody looks at the Army of doing it all, I guess, sometimes. Unless we need to go somewhere, and then was the Navy, now the Navy and the Air Force. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's because of that day as well. Yeah. Any other questions? No? Okay. Were you Army? Robert, right? Roger. I had the R right. Were you Army, Navy? Army?
Army, National Guard.
Oh, okay. 125th? Okay, awesome. Fantastic. Were you? Yeah.
So just do be sure to stop by the table and
Yeah.
talk to John about these artifacts that he brought along. And of course, find you in Frankenmuth
Yeah,
near
definitely.
Bronner's. And thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. I only saw one person fall asleep, and I won't call them out. No, I'm just hopefully I didn't bore anybody. So, yeah.